Hello, folks, and welcome back to Gearbox Podcast, your weekly dose of podcast. I'm Nick,
And I'm Moxi.
and today we are back with the preview videos. We did the F1 Legends series with Lewis Hamilton. If you haven't seen that, make sure to check it out. And now let's talk about the Brazilian GP preview. But before that, let's talk about what happened in Mexico. Moxie, back to you.
So there were a few highlights of this Grand Prix. It was a great start by Max Verstappen in the first lap, who actually kept the first position no matter what happened in the back of his car, or with the Mercedes trying to overtake him. He just showed what a talented driver he is. So let's move on to the silly move made by Gasly, who took a 5 second time penalty, forcing Stroll drive off the track. What are your thoughts on that, Nick?
Yeah, just like Pierre Gasly has said over the last Grand Prix since Japan, you can see a pattern happening from Pierre Gasly, and he showed the same problem in Circuit of the Americas and again in Mexico as well. You can see he has some problems with his brakes, so I think you can pretty much understand that his car is not appealing his talent at the moment, and he hopefully he can get some better results in the Alpine next year.
Yeah, I think it's because of the AlphaTauri at the moment that he's uh, uh, having difficulties with the car, and even though he's a good driver, he do these mistakes because of the car.
Yeah,
So let's move on with the battle between Bottas and Ocon in the lap 42. It was a great battle between these two drivers, and Ocon actually kept his position, and he didn't leave Bottas space to overtake. What do you have to comment on that, Nick?
yeah. Generally, Bottas with a having a battle with both Alpines, if I remember right, in the start of the race with Fernando Alonso, and at kind of the end of the race with Esteban Ocon, uh, in the middle of the race. You can see that I think we can understand actually that Bottas has still much in him. He had a good chance to bring a good result in Mexico. He actually got a good result in the Alfa Romeo, and they gave both a pretty good battle.
Yeah, indeed. So let's move on to the collision between Ricciardo and Tsunoda. Um, Daniel Ricciardo got a 10 second time penalty for causing the collision. Do you think, Nick, that this was a penalty well given to Ricciardo, or it was a bit harsh? What do you think?
Well, of course, it was a big incident since Yuki Tsunoda had to retire the car after that collision, of course. But I don't really know if Daniel Ricciardo deserved this because, of course, he had nowhere to go. He chose to go on the inside line, and he was for quite some time in the right-hand side of Yuki Tsunoda. So I mean, sure, okay. Yuki didn't deserve this DNF. He went quite close to the apex to block Daniel Ricciardo. This costed Ricciardo as well with the penalty. Now, is this penalty deserved? Well, of course, I'm not one of the stewards, but uh, I think I should say that maybe a 5 second penalty was more deserved. But of course, Yuki Tsunoda DNF'd, so I can pretty much understand why they chose to go for a 10 second time penalty.
Yeah, I also think that it wasn't such a well given penalty to Ricciardo. A 5 second time penalty would be better, no matter what happened with Tsunoda. Yeah, I didn't. I don't think that Ricciardo meant to do that. So let's talk about Alonso's DNF, the mechanical failure in lap 65 on the first sector. This is getting ridiculous, to be honest. Why is Alpine having so many failures and so many mechanical failures? Like, what is going on? What do you think, Nick?
Well, unfortunately for us, we can't really understand the mechanical failures, uh, how much is costing Alpine because Alpine is the only team that has Renault-powered engines. So you can pretty much see that it's not good in durability wise, the whole car, but it's just devastating to see Fernando Alonso DNFing yet again well, he DNF'd in Singapore last time, but if you forget the DNFs that he has brought all this year, you can see that he's bringing some pretty good results. Unfortunately, he's not consistent because of the DNFs and the mechanical failures that he's having. But you can understand that there's more in him, and there's no reason to focus only on his mechanical failures. He proves that age doesn't matter in Formula One, and he's doing a pretty good result in this season.
Yeah, he has a few mechanical failures on his car, causing him DNFing so much, but still, he has proven to be a great driver and overpassing these obstacles. So, in the end, Max Verstappen won again, uh, having a great difference with Lewis Hamilton, and unfortunately, Checo Perez was finished in P3, and yeah, he couldn't do much about it. So back to you, Nick.
Yeah, it was such a good result for Max Verstappen as he passed Michael Schumacher and Sebastian Vettel on race wins in a season. Unfortunately for Mercedes, though, in the Mercedes point of view, they had a different strategy to Red Bull, and it was looking good at the start. But unfortunately for them, they did not get a good result with the strategies, causing a bad result with a P2 and a P4 for George Russell. And they lost a chance for maybe a double podium and who knows, maybe a win in Mexico. A track that, well, Mercedes doesn't have such a good history, but you cannot say that everything happens in coincidence in Formula One. What do you think, Moxie?
Yeah, I think that Mercedes' strategy wasn't that great. They didn't think that much, and yeah, causing Lewis Hamilton finish in the P2 and George Russell in P4, like you said. I think that they had the chances to overpass Max Verstappen and have the double P1 and P2 in this Mexico GP. But yeah, they didn't. They failed to do that, and its consequences. So yeah, I hope that they're gonna um, uh, have better places in Brazil. So Nick, tell us a few things about the Brazilian GP.
Right. So the Brazilian GP in Sao Paulo, Interlagos, it's kind of an old Grand Prix, and it stands out quite a lot because it's not made in an even, smooth turf. It has a uphill and downhill sectors, which really gives an entertaining feeling for the drivers and the fans. The first ever Grand Prix was in 1973, and it's a track that many can see that has changed a lot from time to time. And if you see the old layout, you can say that, well, you can get a bit dizzy seeing the whole layout. This year, we're going to have a number of 71 laps, and it's not one of the biggest circuit lengths in the whole calendar, being one of the smallest actually, a 4.3 kilometer in circuit length. And Valtteri Bottas, since 2018, holds the record for the lap, a 1:10.540 in the Mercedes when he was in the Mercedes colors. And yeah, what do you have to say, Moxie, about this?
Yeah, let me add that the driver with the most wins was Alan Prost, with 6 wins. And like you said, Valtteri Bottas holds the fastest lap record. So I think that we're going to see a few, uh, a few drivers trying to overpass that lap record, but I don't think that's going to happen. So let's talk about the predictions. Let's talk about the qualifying predictions, even though we already know who is in the P1 and the race predictions. So, Nick, you can start.
Yeah, what a good result from Kevin Magnussen. Who could expect that? Of course, Mick Schumacher finished in P20 in Friday's quali, and Kevin Magnussen getting the pole position. It's kind of a disappointment for Mick as he's still trying to prove himself and get a new contract to continue his career in Formula One. Unfortunately for him, his poor result isn't helping him get points and maybe get in the spotlight for a new contract. But yeah, Max Verstappen in P2, George Russell causing the whole chaos and bringing the red flag that caused this mixed up grid in Q3. Lando Norris in P4, Carlos Sainz in P5. Not such a good lap by the Spaniard. The two Alpines in the back, Fernando Alonso and Esteban Ocon. And I will let you, Moxie, talk about what happened with Charles Leclerc. What was Ferrari doing there?
Yeah, it was such a silly move. I don't have to comment much on that. The Ferrari just wasn't really on their souls. They did quite a big mistake, and I hope that they're going to change that in the future. So let's move on to the qualifying predictions for me, of course. Yeah, I'm. Let me add on that I was really surprised by Kevin Magnussen being in the first place. Such an interesting result. He was really in the beast mode. He was in the god mode, to be honest. And I'm really happy to see him deserving what him achieving what he deserves. And I think that yeah, I so about the qualifying predictions, I thought that Max Verstappen would be in the first place, uh, Charles Leclerc in the second place, and George Russell in the third place. And about the race in Sunday tomorrow, I think that Max Verstappen is going to win, extending his win record. And the second one, I think that in the second place is going to be Charles Leclerc, and in the third place, Lewis Hamilton overpassing his teammate George Russell is going to finish in the fourth place. Back to you, Nick.
Yeah, it's really looking good for Max Verstappen, of course. In the sprint race, he can probably overtake Kevin Magnussen, of course. We expect a wet race and a wet sprint, which is really gonna show which teams have chosen to do wet strategies with a wet setup, and it's going to really prove which cars are good in the wet. So it's going to be quite a nice spectacle, of course. Again, we're going to say that we have a spring weekend, which probably everybody knows by now, and it's going to give a good excitement. You really don't know what's going to happen on the sprint. If you spin on the sprint, you might lose all the chances and you might have to start from the back of the grid. And it's gonna cost you a lot in the race. it's really hard to say what might happen, but just like you said, I think that Max Verstappen is going to win the Brazilian Grand Prix, following by Lewis Hamilton and George Russell in P3. P4 will go to Carlos Sainz, and I think P5 will go down to Lando Norris. I think that the McLaren is really good in the wet, and Lando himself has a good talent, following the Alpines and Charles Leclerc with Sergio Perez. What do you have else to add, Moxie?
Yeah, quite interesting predictions by you, Nick. I don't have to comment much about what you said. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it for today's preview. Do you want to add anything else, Nick?
Not really. So uh, we will see you for the next one. It's been Nick,
And it's been Moxie.
and we'll see you guys for the next one.